Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a pen pal guide, like a complete pen pal guide for everything that you need to know, from like finding a pen pal to writing a letter. I know that when I started writing to pen pals, I looked a lot on YouTube about how to write letters, what to include in them and everything like that. There's 5 main topics that I'm going to talk about in this video. The first one is how to find your pen pal, and then what to write in the letter, what you can include in the letter, how I store my own letters that I receive, and lastly, any like additional tips that I have for you guys. So starting off with how to find your pen pal. I have 4 pen pals at the moment and I got all of them through Instagram. There's a whole community on there. If you like type in on hashtags pen pals wanted or hashtag pen pal or like incoming or outgoing mail, you would literally find a whole pen paling community that I honestly had no clue even existed before I started pen paling. There are other websites you can use, pen pal Facebook groups, and I'm pretty sure there is a website where you can put in your details and it will help you find a pen pal. Obviously, don't just find a pen pal account and send them your address and be like, hey, do you want to be pen pals? Because that is not a safe thing to do whatsoever. If they have quite a few posts, just like go through their feed just to make sure that they're not just like posting other people's photos and pretending to be someone they're not. I've never come across someone who does that, but just in case, you have to be safe on the internet because you never know what to expect. Please make sure that you are being safe when you give people your address online. Another good thing to do is look in people's bios, because quite often people will put in their bio whether or not they are looking for pen pals. Some people will put in there like no more pen pals wanted, so you know not to message that person. So it's best not to just like waste your time messaging people who have already said they're not looking for more pen pals. Not everyone puts that in their bio though, so it's best to just like maybe message them if they haven't got it in there and ask them if they are looking for anyone. Another thing I would say is to message people who don't have as big of a following. I know that people who have like 1 million followers or like 500,000 followers on Instagram, the likelihood of them getting back to you is probably slim, because they probably have like thousands of people messaging them a day asking if they can be their pen pals. So it's probably best to look for people who have less of a following to increase your chances of them replying back to you. I would also advise you to look for people who have similar interests to you. That could be like music that you like or hobbies, lots of different things. When you do find someone, just send them a message and introduce yourself a little bit and just let them know a bit about yourself, where you're from, what kind of things you like, and then quite often they will message you back and say, hi, like I'm looking for pen pal, you sound like someone who would be interesting to exchange letters with. If you are younger, make sure that you ask your parents' permission before giving anyone your address. Again, like I said earlier, you don't want to just give some random person your address online, so please make sure that you are getting your parents' permission before you do any of that, or even consider looking for a pen pal. Another thing that I like about pen paling is that it doesn't just have to be someone you've met on the internet or even someone who does pen paling. If you have a friend that's moved to a different country or they're going to university or college, you can ask to have their address for where they're going, and then you can keep in touch via letters. You don't just have to stay in touch with letters either, you can still like FaceTime them and message them, but like just sending them a letter like once a month or a couple of times every other month would be like a really nice way to stay in touch. So going on to section 2 for what to write in your pen pal letter. I feel like writing the first pen pal letter is always really difficult, especially if you're the first person writing the letter. You're not really having a conversation, it's just like you telling them about yourself, which sometimes I do find a bit awkward because you don't know anything about them yet. You're just kind of like talking about yourself, and it does seem a bit one-sided, but it does get a lot less easier to write after you've done the first couple of letters. So obviously you want to introduce yourself, talk about where you're from if you're comfortable with that, like the town, the city, or even just like the country you're from. If you are from a different country to your pen pal, obviously the culture is going to be a lot different to where you're from, so you can talk about your culture, but different foods, what kind of like religions there is in your country, or what traditions you have there. You can obviously talk about your hobbies and interests, because if you have reached out to someone who has similar interests to you, that's going to be a really nice way to get the conversation going. You can talk about what you've been up to the last week. You can also talk a bit about school. You don't have to like say specifically where you go to school, but you can talk about what subjects you're doing, why you like school, if you don't like school, what you plan on doing afterwards. And you can also ask them questions as well. So if you start to talk about your own culture, you can ask about theirs, or what kind of pets they have, what their country is like. There is so much you could talk about in the first letter. I feel like you just need to kind of not think too much about it. The first letter is never going to be long because you don't really have that conversation. It's more you just introducing yourself. On to section 3 for what you can include in your pen pal letters. A common misconception about pen paling is that people think you need to have loads of craft supplies, washi tape, pencils, markers, all these different things to be able to pen pal. You really don't need to have a ton of stationery and a ton of different art supplies to be able to start pen paling with someone. I think people forget that the most important thing about pen paling is getting to know the person, sending them letters, having a conversation and building a friendship. So you don't need to worry about sending a ton of stuff to your pen pal, although it is nice sometimes to just send a few different things. One of the most common things I think people put in pen pal letters is like individually wrapped like tea or coffee or hot chocolate sachets. I love sending hot chocolate sachets, probably because hot chocolate's like my favourite hot drink, but I love sending different flavours. When you go to the supermarket down the hot chocolate aisle, depending on where you're from, you can get hot chocolate sachets, which I really love to send. You can send different teas, quite a lot of teas you can get individually wrapped now. Some places have started to do like coffee tea bags, and you can get like sachets of instant coffee. You can send photos or Polaroids from where you're from. I really like to send Polaroids to my pen pals, mainly because they're like instant and you can just take the picture straight away and then put it in the letter. Or if you have something like a HP sprocket, you can print out little pictures from your phone, you connect it via Bluetooth, and then you can print out photos and put them in your letter. You can send photos of whatever you want. It can be of your pets, picture of yourself, or an area from where you're from, or a building that you really like. It can literally be anything. With old Polaroids as well, quite often I will take some and the image will just come out black, or it will be blurry, or it hasn't focused at all. You can just use like a permanent marker and write something over the top. It can be like your favourite saying or a quote or a short poem. Recipes are really fun to send, especially again if you're from a different culture. You can write down a recipe from a traditional dish that you have. Washi tape samples. You don't have to send a whole washi tape. You can send like samples of washi tape. You can send quotes, a mail tag. Basically a mail tag is just a little tag that you write questions on. You can ask your pen pals specific questions like when their birthday is, or what's their favourite colour. They're usually like short, snappy questions that help you get to know the person better. You can send your favourite books, movies and song recommendations. I really like to do this and I really love receiving it as well, especially when they send me like movie recommendations, because I'm constantly looking for new films to watch, especially if it is on Netflix, and a lot of people have Netflix, so you can send your pen pals your favourite Netflix recommendations, what series you're watching. It's just a nice way to connect and get to know what kind of things they're into. Another common thing people quite often put in letters as well is stickers and paper scraps. I feel like this is because a lot of people who pen pal are very crafty kind of people. They like doing art or they like scrapbooking. Obviously what you send in a letter completely depends on the kind of person you're talking to. I'm actually going to be making a video quite soon of loads of different things that you can send your pen pal. This is like a list of stuff that I have made over the last 3 years of pen paling, so I feel like that would be a nice thing to share to help people who are struggling with what to put in their letters. Going on to section 4 on how I store my pen pal letters. I think storing pen pal letters is quite a simple thing, but quite often people don't really know how to sort their letters and organise them. So when I receive a letter from my pen pal, I will write a little number on the back of the envelope. So say my new pen pal has just sent me a first letter, that's the first letter I've received from them, and on the back of the envelope at the bottom usually I will just write the number 1, and then the second letter they send me I'll put a 2 on it, and the third letter I'll put a 3, so I know the order in which I have received those letters. I always start with number 1 and then I just go letter number 1, letter number 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it can just continue. Once I've done that, I tie the letters up with a piece of string and I just put them inside a box, so if I want to I can go back through and read what they've put in those letters, because I really like to go back through and just see what they've sent me, or take things out of the letters to use in my scrapbooking. Quite often as well I will put the most recent letter, usually the one I haven't replied to yet, and I will put it on my desk, because not only does it make it look nicer, but it just reminds me to reply to their letter as well. And finally, section number 5 is additional tips. So tip number 1 is, I feel like something that helps me with a letter is to pick a theme. So quite often when I'm writing my pen pal letter, I'll be really stuck with what kind of like colours to use, or I won't be quite sure what to include. I feel like it's a bit jumbled. Picking a theme really helps to just have an idea of what kind of things you can put in the letter and what colours to use. So this theme can be on colours, your pen pal's favourite show, it can be seasonal, so you can do a winter letter, an autumn letter and a summery kind of letter. Obviously you don't have to do this, sometimes it helps me to figure out how I'd like my letter to turn out. Tip number 2 is to put a return address on the back of your letter. Sometimes when things are getting sent out, they can get lost or end up in the wrong place, and by having that return address on the back, it means that if your letter happens to get lost, or they don't know where it's going, or you've happened to write the wrong address on the front and they can't deliver it, then they can always send it back to you, so you don't lose your letter, and then you can just resend it with the correct address. Tip number 3, if you are busy with school or you can't keep up with letter writing, just let your pen pal know and say, hey, I'm like really busy with school right now, or there's a couple of things going on, I'm not going to be able to reply for the next couple of weeks to months. Or if you've decided that pen paling isn't really something you want to keep up anymore, you can still stay in touch online, but you just might not want to send letters anymore, or you're not enjoying it as much as you used to, then just let them know. It's a lot nicer than just cutting them off. Make sure you let your pen pal know if you have sent them a letter. I don't know if other people do this, but when I have sent my pen pal a letter, I'll quite often go on Instagram and send them a quick message and say, hey, like, I've just sent you a letter, let me know when it arrives. I think this just makes it a lot easier in the long run, so your pen pal actually knows that they are getting a letter. So yeah, just let them know that you've sent a letter. It just makes everything so much easier. Just to say really quick, there was one thing that I completely forgot to mention in the additional tips section. When you write a letter, make sure you take a picture of it before you send it, because if you've got more than one pen pal, the likelihood is you're going to forget what you've told each pen pal, and it just makes it a lot easier. If you get like a delayed letter back, you can remember what you actually said in your last letter, just so you're not repeating anything, and just so you know like what questions they're actually responding to. That is everything I have to talk about in this video. I hope you found it useful in some way. Enjoy the process and getting to know the person. Honestly, it's so much nicer than receiving a quick Instagram message that you can send in 5 minutes. It's so much nicer to receive something that has had effort put into it, and I just think that's a nicer way to communicate with people. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does support me, and I appreciate everyone who watches my videos, and I will see you guys next week.